Hello, everybody, and welcome to Symmetry Live. This is Natasha Helfer. I'm so glad to be back. It's been a few weeks. I had a bit of a Facebook disaster, so hopefully you have been able to find me on Facebook again. My personal page, I think, is non-existent at this point, my original one. So if you're looking for me, either here or on my professional page, or I have a new Facebook page. But anyway, hi, Jenny and Lindsay. Nice to be with you today. But that's why we haven't been live for a few weeks. We had some faux pas. But today we thought we'd talk a little bit about ring theory and how to be emotionally supportive. We just came out of our provider meeting and we were talking about several cases, like and both from two perspectives. How do we as mental health professionals emotionally regulate during times when we're hearing lots of stories that tug at our own emotional hearts, or whatever you want to call that? And then how do we as just the general public manage our emotions when people come to us when they're dealing with a crisis in particular, right? Like a cancer diagnosis or a rape or a suicidal ideation, or all the stuff going along with COVID and all the first responders who are dealing with so much, I think just family trauma at this point, with so many people who are struggling. So I think no matter if you're in a professional position or if you're in like a friend or family position, this idea of how do we support other people when what they're coming to us with elicits our own stuff. Yeah? Am I explaining that right? So let's just start there. I mean, tell me a little bit about what it's like for you personally, when your own stuff is kind of swirling around in times of either your professional work or your personal situations. What do you guys notice?
I think it's hard because it's human nature to automatically insert yourself into the situation or think about what if that happened to me, or what if, I remember I had a friend whose baby died, and I was able to be there with her in her grief up until the moment at the funeral that I saw that little tiny baby coffin. And I had a baby at the time, and I just lost it because instantly in my head I'm like, what if that was my kid? So I think I was able to manage it for the initial part of it because I was able to separate myself enough that I could be there with her in her grief without mentally inserting myself in the situation and saying, what if that had happened to me? But I don't think we should blame ourselves for doing that, because I think that's totally human nature to do that. It's,
Yeah.
you can't really help it.
Yeah, and that's, I think, when people feel badly about those things, that's when typically one thing a lot of people do is just avoid, or like not it, because I don't want to hurt or I don't want to impose myself, then I'll just step back. And I know a lot of people who are in crisis, that's one of their main complaints, is kind of like, where did everybody go? Why do I feel more alone than ever? Why aren't people who I thought cared about me here to help me? Right. So that's a really tough thing when we have our own stuff coming up and then we want to step back, but maybe that's not great either. Blah. Jenny, how are you dealing with this?
Yeah, well, in our provider meeting today, I had a tough case that I chatted about. And this one was just a little bit more sad. I mean, I'm used to hearing sad stories and used to hearing heavy things. What was interesting about this one is that I could tell that this was a person who hadn't unloaded on anyone for a while. So it was just like all the things, right, all at once. So it landed pretty hard on that. And afterwards, I just kind of said, that was really, really sad. And because I'm in a lovely group like this, I get to talk to other professionals and say, listen to my sad story that I heard. And that helps, right? It helps to have someone else in your circle to kind of say, hey, this is the thing that's happening to me professionally. But I did notice myself that day, I'm like, I like kind of need to take a walk here. I'm going to take my dog for a walk, and I'm just going to enjoy, be present-minded, and enjoy all the things that I have in life right now. Be grateful.
So I've heard two things then so far that both of you are talking about. Lindsay said, normalize it. Like, this is part of life. Just be aware of it. Don't freak out just because this is happening. And Jenny, you're talking about do something that might help in the space of managing those emotions. Go on a walk, talk to a friend, watch a fun show, whatever those things are for you, right? So one thing I wanted to talk about really quickly is ring theory. So a psychologist called Susan Silk and Barry Goldman wrote about ring theory. And this is kind of an idea to help people figure out how to help a person in crisis. So the way that they explained it is you put the person in crisis kind of like in the middle, the person that this is happening to, whatever it is. And then that the people who that person would most likely go to, their closest people would be the next circle, right? So you put all the names of, so if that's your sister, or your best friend, or your spouse, or your mom, or, so those would be the people that that person might go to. And then you put another ring of those people in that second ring. Who did they go to, right? To talk to. And kind of, you can do that kind of as many times as you need, because for example, I remember a scene in like, is it Sex and the City? I think where Samantha, if anybody watches that, Sex and the City, was that the name of it? Where I think the lady who's called Samantha, she gets diagnosed with cancer. And they do a really good job, I think, showing the friend's reactions, right? So she's like, yep, I have breast cancer. And the friend is like, oh, and it's like, oh my gosh. And she's crying and she's like, I need you to hold it together because this is happening to me. and kind of pretty quickly her friend kind of, oh yeah, okay. So they show several examples where the friend is trying to help in not so helpful ways, that now the person who has cancer is like not only having to monitor her own distress, but also having to monitor her friend who loves her distress. And so it's like, why am I having to deal with cancer and now taking care of everybody else's feelings about me having cancer, right? It's kind of her approach. So I like this idea that maybe that friend could have had her other friends to go and cry, and I can't believe my friend has cancer, and what happens if I lose her, or what, I don't know how to be supportive, and instead of going to her friend who has cancer for that type of support. So this is kind of where ring theory is trying to help us think about it that way.
So how is this different than gossiping?
Gossiping. Well, I don't know, Jenny. How do you think it's different?
Well, it looks like we have a theory that supports the idea of gossiping, right? I guess so long as you're protective of the original person's identity, maybe. But it's interesting that it's like already a part of like our human nature to like do that sort of thing. Like,
Well, but I like your pushback though, because I do think some things, like if I go and tell my best friend that I was sexually assaulted, I may not want that information shared with other people, right? I may want to hold that in confidence for a while. So I think maybe part of being that second round circle person is saying, hey, would you mind if I shared this with somebody, or is it okay if we get support from another person, or so that you can kind of clue them into who you're going to be talking to. And I always think of gossiping as kind of like this, it's because we all talk about each other, but gossiping has this kind of like, have you heard? Like, oh, the excitement of having information about somebody who is, that's kind of taboo or risque and kind of hurting somebody's reputation. To me, that's kind of a gossiping energy versus like, oh my goodness, I'm really struggling. I need help with this. Do you have any ideas? Or you're a part of a bigger circle. Did you know that our friend is going through this? What can we do to help support? But I do agree that there needs to be, in some cases, a level of permission for that.
Yeah, I think there are some stories that are not your stories to tell. Like I'm thinking of, like I met with some friends socially distancing with a mask for lunch, and it had been a while, so you do the catching up thing, and then they're like, I have this information about the mutual friend, but I'm like, but I don't think this person has publicly said these things. So it's not my story to share that with these guys, even though I would have liked to have heard their perspective on that. So that's something to be mindful too. Is this something that private? Is it public?
Yeah.
Probably should check with your person on that.
Yeah, I love that. And sometimes you can get support in a confidential way. I mean, that's kind of what we do in professional networking. I'm not saying, hey, by the way, this person's name is, and this is their situation. A lot of times when we're consulting as professionals, we're saying, well, I have a case and this is kind of generally what's going on, and we're protecting people's privacy, you know, in regards, but still getting that support we need professionally to say, well, in these types of cases, these are kind of some of the things that you can consider.
And there's also like groups, like for instance, there's, you know, if you're dealing with someone you know that is an alcoholic, that's why they have Al-Anon. They have, you know, depending on the situation, you could even find anonymous groups to go to for that type of support.
Yeah.
And this is really the time that people do reach out to professionals when they are dealing with a person in crisis, that they don't really have people. Their own circle of support may not really have the tool to deal with that particular thing, and they might need a little extra support there. But yeah, that's where a lot of time people do go to professionals to say, hey, this crisis is happening. I need some short-term, just another person outside of all of my life to give me some perspective and just let me vent a little bit.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, in a sense, kind of that's a lot of what therapy and wellness coaching is about, right? Is getting support from a person who, first of all, has an objective kind of more position on it versus subjective. And sometimes, yeah, your support group isn't equipped to either have the information or the capacity emotionally to meet you where you're at. One of the things that, as you both were talking, and I think Lindsay, you had said, you know, earlier, like in our provider meeting, like, you know, you have some of these emotions coming out and you don't want to freak out your clients that you might shed a tear, right? Or something. And at the same, and even though I just gave the example of the friend who's like, oh my gosh, I don't think too that we need to go the other extreme and be robotic, right? Or be like, nothing you say will harm me. It's like, you know, I think that people want some level of empathy. We mirror, you know, mirroring is a psychological concept that is actually backed up by research, where if you smile, more people, you know, people will kind of smile. If you yawn, the person will yawn, right? If you cry, more than likely the other person might cry, or at least emote some of those emotions. So, and that's part of being heard is, you know, if you have like this robotic stance, then the person might not feel like you're empathizing with them. So I think it's more just staying away from extremes. Like you don't want to like overly emote and now have this person have to take care of your emotions. You don't want to necessarily be like Transformers either.
Oh, you're making me have the theme song. I'm not going to do the theme song. Don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, I think if an emotional, you know, moment is happening in therapy, I think it's normal. I think it's to be expected. It's kind of like wow, that was tough to hear. Thank you for sharing that with me. It's that kind of moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't apologize for tears anymore, whether they're happening in therapy or anywhere else. I just I'm hoping to role model that's a normal part of life and we can handle our emotions. So if I shared a tear, I blow my nose or I pat my eye, we move on, right? There's no need for anything bigger than that, I think. Well, that's awesome. Any other closing thoughts on how we can be emotionally supportive?
How? That was a big question there.
Keeping it light.
Yeah, I have closing thoughts. Yeah. So again, I would just kind of, if we're kind of dealing with this sort of person in need, you know, I always like to go to the person and say, you know, we think we know what they need, but maybe double checking in with them. Hey, this is what I can do for you, but this might not be what you need. What is it that you need from me today?
I love that. Communication, not assumptions. Lindsay, any final thoughts from you?
I was going to say, I like what Jenny said, and adding on the word today at the end of it, because it could be different every single day. One day they might need you to cry with them. One day they might need you to, take them out and smash something. I don't know, but I've heard that from grieving people that their needs change all the time. So, keeping in touch with what they need today, right now. What can I do for you right now? And hopefully they'll tell you and you can do it.
I love that. I think there's places you can go smash things.
There is.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's fun.
that can be fun. Nothing like a contained smash arena. All right. Well, I don't think I'll see you all before the holidays are over. So whatever you're doing with your people, I hope you have a good Thanksgiving holiday that we can kind of maybe remember what to be thankful for. I know this is a different type of holiday for many of us. Many of us are not necessarily gathering with as many people as we would have or traveled the way we would have. So just a thought and heartfelt from Symmetry Solutions to all of you who may be watching or listening to take care of yourselves during these kind of challenging seasons of holiday, which holiday seasons are kind of hard to begin with, right? Maybe we'll talk about that next time at Symmetry Live. Symmetry, holidays can be a little tricky to navigate emotionally anyway, not to mention now add a pandemic to it. So, all right, everybody, have a good day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.